When the founders created the Bill of Rights, they placed freedom of speech, religion, assembly, and the press above all others. There was a reason. Those who had come to the colonies had fled persecution where none of those rights existed. People still come to this country even today for those same freedoms that do not even exist in the Western democracies of Europe. You cannot deny the Holocaust without going to jail in Germany and Austria and other nations, for instance. You cannot say arbitrary things or challenge the legitimacy of the government in many nations without persecution and prosecution, but here we can. Or can we? How has the First Amendment been attacked in recent years? How did the modern far-left Marxists control media and interfere with the 2020 election? What has been or is being done to counter this threat to our most basic rights? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, military veteran, historian, author, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. Presidents have a history of suppressing free speech, even going as far as to put journalists in jail for disagreeing with their policies or reporting factual information that undermined their authority. Republican President Abraham Lincoln's administration arrested more than 14,000 political prisoners, including many journalists, and suppressed more than 300 newspapers. He issued an executive order on May 18, 1864, for the arrest and imprisonment of irresponsible newspaper reporters and editors, specifically sent to Major General John A. Dix, stating, "You are therefore hereby commanded forthwith to arrest and imprison in any fort or military prison in your command the editors, proprietors, and publishers of the aforesaid newspapers, and all such persons as, after public notice has been given of the falsehood of said publication, print and publish the same with intent to give aid and comfort to the enemy. And you will hold the persons so arrested in close custody until they can be brought to trial before a military commission for their offense. You will also take possession by military force of the printing establishments of the New York World and Journal of Commerce, and hold the same until further orders, and prohibit any further publication therefrom." Lincoln did not allow freedom of speech to continue or undermine the war effort. Likewise, Democrat Woodrow Wilson created the Committee on Public Information by executive order. And as just one example, he urged Attorney General Gregory to consider charging businessman Theodore Lundy, who published pamphlets, with treason for publishing criticisms of the government. Democrat Franklin D. Roosevelt complained constantly about the press's poisonous propaganda. The threats became real when, during the age of radio, NBC, for example, announced that it was limiting broadcast contrary to the policies of the United States government. CBS Vice President Henry A. Bellows said that no broadcast would be permitted over the Columbia Broadcasting System that in any way was critical of any policy of the administration. FDR even used the Department of the Treasury, Federal Communications Commission, and the Internal Revenue Service to dig into the tax records of journalists, going as far back as 1925 of such critics as David Lawrence of the United States News. William Randolph Hearst, the legendary newsman, was also targeted, and he had been instrumental in securing Roosevelt's nomination in 1932, but had since turned against his old ally. Roosevelt instructed the Department of the Treasury to closely monitor Hearst's taxes. FDR had violated the First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendments of journalists whom he wanted silenced. He targeted those journalists and newspapers that he saw as the foes of democracy by accusing them of unfairly maligning him. These attacks on freedom of the press became less obvious under the Biden administration, since most newspapers, TV news, government agencies, the Biden White House, and social media pretty much all belonged to the hard left, which is no secret. The attacks against the First Amendment actually came from the press and social media, especially when it came to silencing voices who disagreed with progressives. The First Amendment does not protect social media platforms, as they are private and can allow whatever they wish on their platforms. However, where the liberal social media platforms went wrong was that they only allowed one point of view and during an election cycle, which was considered contributions in kind and a violation of federal election laws by favoring one party over another while denying the opposition an equal opportunity. In fact, the Aspen Institute was a major player, along with the 51 former heads of acronym and intelligence agencies working to protect Joe Biden from his family's criminal activities by suppressing and pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story prior to the 2020 election. Social media played a huge role. During congressional hearings, we heard the social media giants such as Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, and others deny, and in fact commit perjury, that they were working with Democrats and even federal agencies to suppress opposing viewpoints, even when those opinions were solid and based in fact. Zuckerberg testified before a joint hearing of two Senate committees. The first was to explain a Russian propaganda group called the Internet Research Agency, which used Facebook ads, fake accounts, and pages to influence voters in the run-up to the 2016 U.S. election. Conservative voice suppression was deafening. The most recent was Facebook's admission that a data firm named Cambridge Analytica received unauthorized access to up to 87 million users' private data without their consent beginning in 2014. Dorsey of Twitter committed perjury when he stated that his platform does not use political ideology to make any decisions, a lie that became apparent to everyone after he stepped down as CEO of Twitter. When Elon Musk bought Twitter, he exposed all of these illegal activities that Dorsey had allowed and Twitter had committed, and how the Biden administration was in full drive mode to censor information detrimental to Democrats in general and the Biden crime family in particular. Facebook and Twitter shadow banned or outright removed those voices who posted information the liberals felt was misinformation or disinformation, while they continued putting their own lies within the public domain. The shutdown opposing medical specialists, many being the top scientists, medical specialists, and virologists in the world who challenged Dr. Anthony Fauci's lies and fabrications regarding the origins of the Wuhan virus, also known as the China virus, were silenced. They shut down anyone who disagreed with mask mandates and shutdowns of schools, churches, and small businesses, while the large corporations remained open because they donated to liberal candidates. People who came forward and proved Fauci was lying and challenged the various pharmaceutical companies were removed from these platforms, many without any explanation. The platforms hid behind their community guidelines, which clearly favored liberals with a bias that was impossible to hide. Then the federal government joined the media in touting the false allegations of President Trump's Russia collusion hoax, spurred by the Steele dossier, created by Hillary Clinton and the current fraudulent and highly unqualified National Security Advisor, the fake Jake Sullivan. Opposing voices with contrary evidence or real facts proving the false narrative leveled by Democrats during the last year of the Trump administration, and later the outright lies of the Biden administration, were closed down on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook also deleted my friend, actor and producer Kevin Sorbo for his conservative and religious views, but he was not alone. Thousands of people were kicked out of various platforms, including LinkedIn.com, for challenging or ridiculing any Democratic positions, while anti-Republican and anti-conservative hate speech was allowed to flourish. I know this firsthand. The double standard finally became so glaring that the House of Representatives led by Republicans wanted answers, hence the required testimonies of Zuckerberg and Dorsey. It has also surfaced that the FBI had contacted Facebook and Twitter and informed them that they were going to be exposed to political disinformation regarding Hunter Biden, and that it was in fact proven to be Russian disinformation. Well, we know that was a lie. Even after the FBI and the Justice Department knew the laptop was genuine, they still pushed the order to suppress the information from social media, orders given by the White House. They also pushed the removal of any voice that tried to defend releasing the information ahead of Joe Biden's presidential run. Then the Biden Internal Revenue Service and Justice Department really violated many Americans' constitutional rights when they began leaning on journalists like reporters Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger. Taibbi, being a Democrat, was the toast of the progressive left, appearing regularly on shows like Democracy Now! And other liberal programs, and others hosted by Bill Moyers and Rachel Maddow. Yet, when Taibbi first testified as to his evidence of social and news media suppression of free speech before the committee in March, congressional Democrats denounced him as a so-called journalist, a hypocrite, a profiteer, and Twitter owner Elon Musk's lackey. In fact, the Marxist Virgin Islands delegate Stacey Plaskett, the ranking Democrat, threatened Taibbi with perjury charges and a 5-year prison sentence after she claimed he had made a minor misstatement in his testimony. The Federal Trade Commission demanded, as the Post noted, all internal communications by, from, or about Musk, and telling him to name reporters he shared information with, as if exposing White House misconduct were a federal crime. Schellenberger testified that the Federal Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and its nonprofit partners had targeted political jokes, hyperbole, and specific viewpoints contrary to the Democratic narrative for social media companies to suppress. On July 4th, federal judge Terry Doughty, ruling in Missouri v. Biden, condemned the Biden administration for potentially the most massive attack against free speech in United States history. Several federal judges ruled against the Biden administration for aggressive anti-illegal censorship, especially when it concerned the COVID-19 vaccinations or anything posted challenging the 2020 election, thereby subverting Americans' awareness of problems with mail-in ballots and polling booths. In State of Missouri v. Biden, case number 23-30445 in the Fifth Circuit of 2023, the plaintiffs included 3 doctors, a news website, a healthcare activist, and 2 states had posts and stories removed or downgraded by the Twitter and Facebook collective. Their content touched on a host of divisive topics like the COVID-19 lab leak theory. State of Louisiana v. Biden was lost for the same reason. The U.S. Supreme Court received these cases on appeal and ruled in favor of the plaintiffs and placed an injunction preventing the government from coercing the social media platforms. The Court of Appeals found that the district court was correct in its assessment. Unrelenting pressure from certain government officials likely had the intended result of suppressing millions of protected free speech postings by American citizens. The Federal Appeals Court issued an injunction prohibiting federal officials from acting to coerce or significantly encourage social media companies to remove, delete, suppress, or reduce, including through altering their algorithms, posted social media content containing protected free speech. The major newspapers, such as the New York Times, also distorted and bent the First Amendment rights of Americans. In fact, they are so bent to the left, they fired editorial page editor James Bennett in June 2020, actually forcing him to resign after his department published a widely criticized opinion article written by Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas for suggesting using the National Guard to protect cities against BLM terrorist riots, a clear violation of Senator Cotton's First Amendment rights. Currently, liberal prosecutors and judges have been issuing gag orders against former President Trump, ordering him not to talk about the various cases he is involved in. While these same prosecutors have no such restriction, they talk about the case all the time. The appeals have been favorable for Trump, stating that he cannot be gagged, especially as a presidential candidate, as it violates his First Amendment speech rights. During the so-called Summer of Love, riots by the domestic terror groups Black Lives Matter and Antifa, any opposing viewpoints that did not support burn, loot, murder, Antifa and their allies during their over 600 riots, including arson, assault, and even murder, were suppressed and scrubbed. But other violations were also in play. The FBI, under Director Christopher Wray, authorized a memo allowing spying on and then contemplating charging Catholic Americans for domestic terrorism since they were, quote, considered far-right extremists. The FBI at first lied, stating that it never happened. In fact, they claimed the memo never existed until the memo surfaced, and after congressional grilling of Wray, Attorney General Merrick Garland had the memo rescinded by the FBI after facing criticism from federal and state officials, clergy, and other groups. That violated freedom of religion. Since the start of the Biden administration, due to the outcry and the exposure of their practices, they cannot control the media as they used to. Several court cases have ensured that. But what they do now is provide their own disinformation service by not accurately reporting facts, only giving their slant when it benefits the liberal narrative. Colleges and universities have become hypocritical bastions of progressive influence, claiming diversity, equity, and inclusion, except when it comes to an opposing viewpoint. For example, female swimmer Riley Gaines was invited to give a talk on keeping men out of women's sports. She was the 2022 Southeastern Conference Women's Swimming and Diving Scholar Athlete of the Year and a champion until transgender man Leah Thompson competed against the women, defeating them. As may have been expected, the gender pronoun and biologically confused in the audience shouted her down and threatened her, chasing her into a hallway, requiring her to seek shelter until campus police came to her rescue. Emeritus Harvard University law professor Alan Dershowitz, a lifelong Democrat, has been shut down and shunned by the Democrat Party for calling the progressives out for their consistent hypocrisy regarding free speech. Dershowitz, being a constitutional scholar of the First Order, clearly outlined the violation of civil and constitutional rights, for which he fought to ensure, being perpetrated by the progressive left-wing Marxists. His exposure of their activities and being a logical voice of reason was not welcomed. With the Marxist freedom of speech only goes one way, apparently. They have in their majority shut down conservative thought and terminated and harassed conservative speakers on campuses. They've shut down ideological opponents, thus violating the First Amendment. Likewise, the progressive Marxists who have sided with global terrorists have tried to shut down pro-Israeli voices, even resorting to violence resulting in the death of 69-year-old Paul Kessler in Thousand Oaks, California. He was murdered by 50-year-old pro-Palestinian Moore Park College professor Loe Abdel Fattah al-Naji on November 5, 2023, but the media portrayed it as an accident. The current Justice Department has little interest in protecting the rights of conservatives, only using their vast resources to attack, arrest, and indict those opposed to the Biden administration and their progressive agenda. Thanks for watching today's episode of Forgotten History. If you like this episode, please consider becoming a channel member or joining our Patreon page. This would help us offset the ever-increasing cost of production. As always, please like, share, and comment. And if you have any show ideas, please contact us, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Until next time.